Hello again everyone, this is Natsu. Stephen Krashen, who is one of the most renowned figures in second language acquisition, he said, "We all acquire the language the same way." I interpret it as meaning that it doesn't matter where you live or how old you are. If you want to improve your English while living in Japan, I bet you will enjoy this video. First of all, I just wanted to let you know that the disclosure in this video is based on the 5 hypotheses proposed by Stephen Krashen. And here's the great news. The key takeaway from Krashen's message, in our case, about learning English, it's not that you must living in an English-speaking country. Krashen's 5 hypotheses hold many beautiful insights, so I'm excited to share them with you guys in this video. Plus, I'm gonna mix in my personal experiences. I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you have got any questions, comments, please let me know. I would love to hear what you have to say. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you're more than welcome to as well. Alright, let's get right into it. Okay, let's start with the first hypothesis, which is called the acquisition learning hypothesis. There are 2 processes involved in learning English, acquisition and learning. Do you see the distinction between these 2 terms? So acquisition is an unconscious process, much like how babies learn a language. They don't study grammar or vocabulary by memorizing rules. Instead, they learn through trial and error. So slowly building up their understanding. It's not about knowing things, but also learning by using the language. The objective here is not to speak with perfect grammar or pronunciation, but to be understood by others. If you succeed in communicating, those small wins turn into your knowledge. Learning is more like a conscious process. This is the typical study style study, which we are familiar with. And Krashen explained that acquisition is key to truly mastering a language, and while learning serves more of supporting role, mainly helping to correct mistakes. I'm going to talk about the idea of correction further when we move on to the next chapter. What I found fascinating is that according to Krashen, learning does not contribute to our ability to produce language. So what he meant was learning is only used for making corrections, which is interesting, isn't it? I've mentioned this concept in some of my old videos though, especially when talking about the English brain. I've said that translating from Japanese to English is not necessarily the same with understanding English directly. Let's say you're clumsy like me, and if you trip on the street and someone asks, "Are you okay?" you can guess that the person wanted to check on you. This is different from memorizing, like "Are you okay?" means 大丈夫ですか in Japanese, then applying that phrase when necessary. Can you see the major difference between those 2? Krashen also argued that acquisition is far more effective than learning. But there is a huge paradox for Japanese speakers. Japanese speakers learning English, even though learning is not very effective for our improvement in language learning, we often avoid acquisition on purpose. On purpose, unconsciously, if that makes sense. Do you want to know the reason why? You might feel like you've been slapped on the face. Be ready for that. Because learning is much more comfortable than acquisition. The acquisition process can be associated with pain. In my experience with learning English, people who improve at English do not just work hard. They also possess one important attribute. That is, they are not afraid to dive into acquisition. Think about those people you know can speak English. Doesn't it sound familiar? What I have learned from Krashen's theories and what I want to share with you guys is that you shouldn't be afraid of trial and error. Remember that it's also a huge part of learning English too. The reason you feel stagnant might be that you keep going back to learning. Speaking up with what you know leads directly to acquisition. As adults, I understand that we often let our egos get in the way, trying to speak perfectly or like sound like a native speaker. This can be a bottleneck of our improvement. Many of you guys have actually more English knowledge that you give yourselves credit for. We Japanese learners tend to focus more on learning. If there's one thing that I can say about improving your English, I would say start by listing what you can do to focus on acquisition, and without any excuse, start it from today. Let's move on to the next one. The second hypothesis is called the monitor hypothesis, which ties into what I mentioned about learning. So when we learn a language, we can use our learned knowledge, like grammar, to correct our speaking or writing. This correction process is what Krashen calls the monitor. I like to think of monitor as a way to check our language. Probably it sounds more familiar. I don't want something like rigid or intimidating. When we want to say something, we sometimes use our grammar knowledge to kind of correct what we want to say. Of course, it requires a bit of time, but then we think about something and then we say stuff. But the key point here is that Krashen believes that this monitor function does not contribute to our real fluency. It's only for fine-tuning what we already know. This is quite a strong opinion though. I feel like there is some truth to it. In my personal opinion, I feel like there is a new rule for improving English. No matter what your native language is, if you've got something to say or express, you would choose the words that you already know and just say it. This essentially leads to acquisition, which we already discussed. If you understood, that's a success. Good on you. But if you were not understood, that's still okay. Remember trial and error. You can still learn from error too. And these small wins build up. And speaking first and then correcting as you go. It is actually much easier. Do you still think grammar is your foundation? I mean, some people say grammar and pronunciation and other stuff as some sort of like pillars to build up your English ability. I wouldn't dismiss it at all. It makes me feel complicated because I'm a person who has built up foundation first. I started studying English in school. However, what I want to ask is, if so, when will that foundation be complete? I mean, how long is it gonna take? Is it gonna take another 5 years or 10 years? We have spent enough and we are tired of making foundation already. Probably that's why you're looking for another tip to improve your English, right? What I can suggest is instead of waiting, try expressing what you can right now, and you'll probably realize that your English is actually better than you think. Like, believe me, as long as you're motivated, I think grammar can be improved naturally as you monitor your progress. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The third hypothesis is called the input hypothesis, which is my favorite, so hear me out. It suggests that language acquisition happens when we are exposed to comprehensible input. In other words, language that is just one step above your current level, often called I+1. I often repeat this though. When it comes to English, I don't think you need elaborate, like fancy expressions as much as you might think. You might think like those fancy expressions will show like your caliber of ability, but unfortunately they do not. If you love English and if you want to dive deeper into it, go for it. But it's not necessary for everyday communication. I can tell you that. And what's interesting here is, according to Krashen, languages are not learned through our conscious practice or speaking, but through understanding. And what he meant was, when you truly understand something, you naturally progress to the next step, which is essentially your +1. Let me ask you something. Are you trying to learn certain words, idioms or expressions, because they might sound cool or native-like, even though you don't fully understand them? I want you to think about these two sentences. The act of learning is of paramount and significance within the context of human existence. The second one is, hey, learning is very important in life. The first one sounds impressive, even gorgeous, doesn't it? With practice, we might be able to say it eventually. However, we don't deeply understand it, do we? On the other hand, the second one is crystal clear and very simple. We all understand it. Actually, this is the key to leveling up. The important thing here is to value simple, understandable expressions that you can fully understand. This is how real learning happens, and once you have truly understood something, you can smoothly move on to the next +1 step. Over time, those small steps will build up and allowing you to use longer sentences and probably story with details. And try not to push yourself too hard. Focus on simple and crystal clear sentences and vocabulary that you can fully understand. And I tell you, this is going to form the foundation of your +1 and will lead to real growth in your English ability. Let's go to the next one, which is the fourth one, isn't it? It's called the affective filter hypothesis. It's about how our emotions and mindset can impact our ability to learn a language. And some people might not like to mix feelings or mindset kind of thing with language, but the truth is your emotional state can affect your language performance quite a bit. Here's a piece of advice that I would love to give you guys. If you are worried about others judging your English, and that's often a reflection of how you are judging your English by yourself. We are our own toughest critics, aren't we? So what you need is actually a positive regard for your English. Accept that you are learning English and working on your English hard. By accepting yourself and your effort, you will start building confidence. Unconditional acceptance of your own English will lead to your growth. That's pretty much it. Lastly, let's talk about the natural order hypothesis. No matter what your native language is, we tend to acquire grammatical rules and structures in a specific order. And what's interesting here is that, for example, in English, most learners first acquire the, I don't know what it's called, I energy, like running or levitating. And then we often learn the rule of adding s to make plurals like apples. This is showing that forced learning has its own limits. And this is implying that learners are naturally inclined to pick up certain rules in a particular order, even if textbooks or teachers tell them otherwise. Considering that, first of all, the key is not to stress about forcing yourself to memorize grammar. In fact, not trying too hard is often what helps. When you combine this with other hypotheses that we have looked at, many things will come naturally as you keep learning English. This is my personal opinion though. I do believe that the speed and the quality of learning can be very, very different depending on the person. It can be because of their lifestyle, interest, or their unique relationship with the language. Each learner has their own pace and stages of learning. So that's the reason why I'm not a big fan of saying hey, this really works and this never ever works, because everyone is different. English is not everything in life, right? I think the most effective learning comes when you take charge of your own studying. So you commit to English because you want to do it and in your own way, not in someone's way, not in teacher's way, but in your own way. Thank you for watching this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know by clicking the like button. And if you've got any questions, comments, I would love to hear them. So leave it down below there. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you're more than welcome to as well. All right, I see you guys in the next video.